In the small, quiet town of Pripyat, nestled amid rolling hills and fields of golden wheat, there was a pumpkin patch unlike any other. It was known as Hollow's Harvest, and it had been a cherished tradition for generations. Every year, in the crisp autumn days leading up to Halloween, families would venture to Hollow's Harvest to pick the perfect pumpkin for carving. The patch, expansive and thriving, was a sight to behold, with rows of bright orange orbs sprawling in every direction. One sunny Saturday, 8 eager children, their laughter and excitement filling the air, embarked on their annual pilgrimage to Hollow's Harvest. They were an eclectic group, each bringing their own sense of adventure to the expedition. Among them was Ava, a 12-year-old girl with sparkling green eyes and a love for adventure that rivaled the boys. Her 10-year-old brother, Michael, was a cautious but inquisitive lad, always seeking to keep his sister safe. Then there were the twins, Evelyn and Ethan, both 8 years old, inseparable and full of mischief. Also joining the group was Lily, the bookish and shy 9-year-old with a penchant for drawing. Sammy, the 11-year-old with a wild imagination and boundless energy, rounded out the group along with Emma, a sensible and responsible 13-year-old. As they entered Hollow's Harvest, the children marveled at the sheer abundance of pumpkins. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the patch, giving it an almost mystical aura. With wagons in tow, they ventured deeper into the sea of pumpkins, eager to find the most exceptional ones. The day passed uneventfully, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, the air grew colder, and the children's laughter filled the patch with a comforting ambience. Their carving designs became more intricate, and the scent of pumpkin guts and fall leaves hung in the air. It was as if they were caught in the timeless embrace of this enchanted place. But then, as the moon climbed higher in the night sky, something shifted. An eerie stillness settled over Hollow's Harvest, and a strange feeling began to take hold of the children. It started as a whisper, a rustling in the nearby cornfield, but soon it became an unsettling presence. Michael was the first to notice, his eyes darting nervously to the darkened rows of cornstalks. He tugged at Ava's sleeve, and she looked around with a sense of unease. The twins, sensing their siblings' unease, held hands and looked to the cornfield as well. With an unspoken agreement, the children decided it was time to leave. They began to pack up their pumpkins and head for the exit, but the winding rows of pumpkins seemed to change shape before their eyes, and the path that had once been clear now appeared tangled and confusing. Panic set in as they realized they were lost, unable to find their way out. Frightened and disoriented, the children huddled together. The moonlight, dimly casting eerie shadows, added to their growing sense of dread. The cornfield that had whispered earlier now seemed to whisper louder, and the wind carried voices that weren't theirs. Then, as they clung to each other, their group of 8 suddenly became 7. Ethan, one of the twins, had vanished without a trace. Panic surged through the children, and they called out for him, their voices quivering in the night. Minutes turned into hours, and the children remained lost and terrified. The cornfield, once a source of comfort, had become a sinister presence. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper in the wind, seemed to be taunting them. Their search for Ethan was futile, and they feared they were being watched by something otherworldly in the moonlit patch. With heavy hearts and growing fear, they made the gut-wrenching decision to leave without Ethan. They knew they had to find their way out and seek help. As they finally stumbled upon a path that seemed to lead them toward the edge of Hollow's Harvest, the sorrow and guilt they carried was almost unbearable. They couldn't shake the feeling that the patch itself had swallowed Ethan, and the whispers in the wind told them he might never return. When they emerged from the patch, Ava, tears streaming down her face, was the first to spot the flickering lights of a distant farmhouse. They hurried toward it, and with trembling voices, explained their harrowing experience to the kind-hearted farmer who opened his door. The police were called, and a search was launched for Ethan, but despite their efforts, no trace of the young boy was ever found. Hollow's Harvest remained a place of deep mystery and sorrow, where the memory of those lost children lingered like a ghostly presence. To this day, the town of Pripyat remembers the fateful night when 7 children entered the pumpkin patch and only 6 returned. Each Halloween, when the moon rises high in the sky, a faint whisper in the wind and the ghostly shadows of Hollow's harvest serve as a chilling reminder of the haunting tragedy that occurred within those seemingly innocent rows of pumpkins. Once upon a time, in a small, quaint town nestled in the heart of the American Midwest, there lived a kindly grandmother named Agnes and her sweet, innocent granddaughter, Hannah. The town was known for its cozy, tight-knit community, especially during the Halloween season when the whole place would transform into a festive wonderland. With Halloween just around the corner, the pumpkin patch on the outskirts of town was a hub of activity. Families would flock to the patch, eagerly searching for the perfect pumpkin to carve, decorate, and light up for the holiday. Agnes, a sprightly woman with a heart full of love, and Hannah, a young girl with rosy cheeks and a vibrant imagination, decided to visit the patch together to select the grandest pumpkin in preparation for the upcoming Halloween festivities. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the sleepy town, Agnes and Hannah set out on their adventure. Wrapped in warm coats and scarves, they made their way to the pumpkin patch, which was situated just beyond the town's limits. The autumn air was crisp, and the crunch of leaves beneath their feet provided a comforting soundtrack. Upon arrival, they were greeted by the welcoming sight of the pumpkin patch aglow with lanterns. The scent of pumpkin and spices hung in the air, and laughter echoed from other families wandering through the rows of gourds. The atmosphere was filled with a warm, communal spirit. The pair began their search, each carrying a small lantern to help navigate the growing darkness. Hannah's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Agnes couldn't help but smile as they weaved through the maze of pumpkins. After a considerable amount of time had passed, they stumbled upon an exceptional pumpkin, much larger than the rest. It sat apart from the others, seemingly untouched by the other eager pickers. Hannah insisted on claiming it as their own, and Agnes, ever indulgent of her granddaughter's wishes, agreed with a warm chuckle. However, as Agnes reached down to lift the colossal pumpkin, a shiver ran down her spine. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something about the situation felt eerie. Just as they were about to start the long trek back home, a bone-chilling breeze swept through the patch, extinguishing their lanterns. Agnes and Hannah found themselves plunged into complete darkness, the only sound being the eerie whispers of the wind. Agnes's heart began to race as she realized that they were entirely alone in the pumpkin patch. She called out for Hannah, her voice trembling with fear, but there was no response. Panic set in as Agnes fumbled to relight her lantern. With a trembling hand, she managed to illuminate the area around her, and her heart sank. Hannah was gone. The colossal pumpkin they had chosen together remained, but her beloved granddaughter had vanished into the night. Agnes's fear quickly transformed into sheer terror. She searched the patch, screaming for Hannah, her voice a desperate cry in the dark. She approached the colossal pumpkin and noticed an unnatural, sinister glow emanating from its cracked surface. Tears welled up in Agnes's eyes as she realized that her granddaughter was trapped within the monstrous gourd. She fell to her knees, her cries of agony echoing through the desolate patch. As the night wore on, Agnes's despair grew. Her sobs were met with silence, and the townspeople, who had all gone home for the night, remained oblivious to her cries for help. The moon, pale and haunting, cast eerie shadows across the patch. Agnes, determined to rescue her granddaughter, began to desperately carve into the gigantic pumpkin. The flesh inside was cold and unnatural, and each cut sent a shiver down her spine. When she finally breached the surface, a grotesque and horrifying sight awaited her. Within the pumpkin, Hannah's lifeless body lay, her once rosy cheeks now pallid and sunken. Agnes's heart shattered as she reached out to touch her beloved granddaughter, only to find that she, too, was becoming part of the monstrous gourd. Agnes's cries grew louder as she realized the terrifying truth. The pumpkin patch was cursed, a malevolent entity that devoured the souls of those who dared to pick the colossal gourd, It had claimed her granddaughter and was now claiming her. As Agnes's vision darkened, her world dissolved into agony and despair. The colossal pumpkin, now grotesquely disfigured, emitted a sinister, otherworldly light as it continued to grow, becoming a harbinger of death and sorrow. The following morning, the townspeople arrived at the pumpkin patch, excited to pick the best gourds for their Halloween festivities. They marveled at the colossal pumpkin with its eerie glow, completely unaware of the horror that lurked within. And as the Halloween season approached, Agnes and Hannah's story became nothing more than a chilling legend, a tale told around campfires, warning all who heard it to beware of the colossal pumpkin in the cursed patch on the outskirts of their sleepy, quaint town. Once upon a time, in a sleepy town nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods, there lived a newlywed couple. The town was known for its charming pumpkin patch, a place where locals and visitors alike flocked to during the fall season. Sarah and David, the couple in question, had recently tied the knot, and they decided to make a visit to the patch to pick out the perfect pumpkin to carve for their first Halloween together. The air was crisp, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the rows of pumpkins as they strolled hand in hand. Laughter filled the air as children ran excitedly among the pumpkins, picking out their favorites. As Sarah and David browsed, they noticed a peculiar sight. A small child, no older than 6 or 7, dressed like a ghost, with a tattered white sheet draped over their tiny frame. The ghostly child approached the couple with a mischievous grin and introduced themselves as Sammy. They spoke with an eerie calmness that sent shivers down David's spine. Sammy told Sarah that they knew a secret place in the woods, a hidden treasure trove of Halloween costumes and decorations. Sarah, being fond of all things Halloween, couldn't resist the temptation. David, however, had a bad feeling about it. He was cautious and suggested that he would stay behind to continue searching for the perfect pumpkin while Sarah and Sammy ventured into the woods. She reluctantly agreed, her excitement overriding her concern, and off they went into the darkening forest. Time ticked away, and David, now laden with pumpkins, began to worry. A couple of hours had passed, and Sarah and Sammy hadn't returned. He asked the other pumpkin patch visitors and even inquired with the workers, but their responses were baffling. None of the workers had seen a child matching Sammy's description, and they claimed that the patch only sold pumpkins, no costumes or decorations. Panic gnawed at David as he scoured the patch, his heart pounding in his chest. Fear and desperation drove him to rush to the nearby police station, where he frantically reported his wife as missing. The police immediately launched a search operation, but the hours turned into days, and there was no sign of Sarah. Then, on Halloween night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over the town, the phone rang in David's small, dark apartment. The voice on the other end was solemn, a police officer informing him that they had found Sarah's body in the woods. David's heart sank, and tears welled in his eyes as he rushed to the gruesome scene. In the dim light, he saw the lifeless form of his beloved Sarah lying on the cold ground. Her body was marred with grotesque markings and deep scratches that told a gruesome tale of torment. It was a sight that would forever haunt his dreams. The police confirmed that she had been dead for at least 2 days, and they were at a loss to explain the true horror she had endured. David could hardly fathom the sinister turn of events, the innocence of the pumpkin patch, and the charm of Halloween now forever tainted by this terrible tragedy. The town was left with a chilling mystery, a tale of loss and malevolence that would forever cast a pall over Halloween, and the memory of a small child named Sammy in a ghostly costume, who had lured Sarah away into a nightmare from which she would never awaken.